She says it so casually. Everyone has a past. I don't get attached easily. Sex doesn't mean anything to me. She sounds fine, balanced, detached. But emotional detachment isn't peace. It's protection. Behind those calm words lies a nervous system trained to feel less. A heart that's learned connection is dangerous. In this series, I'm going to decode 8 phrases women use when they've slept with a lot of men and reveal how each one hides the quiet truth about emotional numbness, fear, and loss. You're not supposed to judge her, but you are supposed to see clearly, because what you can't see will cost you. She's not lying when she says those words. She's protecting herself. Each phrase is a layer of armor built over years of emotional rewiring. The more she's been through, the more fluent she becomes in the language of distance. But language never lies. It always leaves traces of patterns, conditioning, and pain disguised as power. And once you learn to listen differently, you'll realize something. Women don't confess their experiences directly. They reveal them through repetition. The same sentences, the same tone, the same defense dressed up as self-assurance. So let's break the code, phrase by phrase. Because the first one is the most common, the most rehearsed, and the most revealing of all. Phrase number 1. Body count is just a number. She says it with confidence. Calm, composed, almost like she's above the question. But if you watch closely, her eyes flicker. It's not the words that matter. It's the tone behind them. This phrase isn't about reassurance. It's about control. It's a preemptive strike meant to flip the guilt before you even ask the question. When a woman tells you her body count is just a number, what she's really doing is rewriting the narrative. She knows what men value. Loyalty, exclusivity, that primal sense that what you have is yours. And deep down, she knows the truth. That the more men she's been with, the harder it becomes for a man to see her the same way. So she reframes the topic before you can even think about it. You're not supposed to judge. You're supposed to feel ashamed for caring. But let's be real. If it were truly just a number, she wouldn't need to defend it first. 1. She wouldn't rationalize it, soften it, or turn it into a debate about insecurity. She'd say nothing, because people only defend what they secretly doubt. This phrase works like emotional judo. It takes your natural standards, your instinct to value exclusivity, and turns it against you. The more you back down, the more you train yourself to ignore your intuition. That's how emotional leverage is built. Slowly, through guilt disguised as openness. So, don't argue when you hear it. Don't question her. Don't attack her. Just observe. Because that line reveals more than any confession could. It tells you how she manages shame, how she handles accountability, and how she shifts responsibility in conversation. A woman who's at peace with her past doesn't hide it behind slogans. She owns it quietly, not defensively. Remember this. Avoidance always speaks louder than honesty. So the next time you hear, "It's just a number," don't listen to the tone. Listen to the silence that follows it. That's where the truth always lives. Phrase number 2. Everyone has a past. She says it when the air turns heavy. When your questions start getting too close to something she doesn't want to explain. Her voice softens, almost defensive, like she's asking for compassion. But this line isn't meant to bring peace. It's meant to shut the door. It sounds like understanding, but it's really negotiation. When a woman says, "Everyone has a past," she's not trying to connect. She's testing your limits. She wants to know how far she can push your tolerance before you start to pull away. She's not asking for acceptance. She's measuring your capacity to ignore what others couldn't. It's not forgiveness she's after. It's leverage. See, in psychology, we call this reputation management. By normalizing her past, she lowers your resistance. You start to feel that judging her history would make you insecure or immature. And that's how she gains emotional ground. Not by honesty, but by appealing to your empathy. And men, especially the ones who want to be the good guy, fall for it every time. But there's a difference between understanding someone's past and pretending it doesn't exist. When she says, everyone has a past, what she's really communicating is, I hope you're the one man willing to look away. And if you do, you'll become exactly that, the man who looks away when he shouldn't. The truth is, everyone does have a past, but not everyone uses it as a shield. A woman who's moved on from her mistakes talks differently. She doesn't minimize them. She's transparent because she's healed. The ones who haven't, they dress their history in soft words and social logic, hoping you'll bite the bait of understanding. So here's the rule. When someone tells you everyone has a past, don't nod. Listen for the subtext. The words may sound harmless, but what she's really saying is, I've done things that would make you hesitate, and I need to know if you'll let me off the hook. She's not looking for acceptance. She's looking for leverage. Phrase number 3. If men can do it, women can do it too. It sounds fair, right? Equality, balance, progress. But equality isn't the same as sameness, and she knows that. When a woman says this, she's not talking about freedom. She's talking about permission. Permission to do what she wants without facing consequence. It's a statement disguised as logic, but built on emotional denial. What she's really saying is, if men can disconnect from intimacy, then I can too. And you have no right to care. Here's where psychology comes in. Men and women may both seek pleasure, but they bond differently. Men release dopamine, the chemical that drives reward and conquest. Women release oxytocin, the hormone that drives attachment and connection. That's not moral judgment, it's biology. And biology doesn't bend for ideology. When she uses this phrase, she's not trying to mirror male behavior. She's trying to mimic emotional detachment. But imitation doesn't protect her from the side effects. Every time she treats intimacy like a transaction, she feels less. Every time she tries to match men's energy, she trains her nervous system to stop trusting emotional connection. And that's the real cost. Numbness disguised as liberation. It's a subtle form of rebellion, not empowerment. Because deep down, she doesn't want to be equal in indifference. She wants to prove she can play the same game and win. But in emotional economics, no one wins by disconnecting. They just lose slower. So when you hear that line, if men can do it, women can do it too, don't get defensive. Just know what it means. It's not feminism speaking. It's fatigue. It's the voice of someone who's been hurt and decided that feeling less is safer than feeling wronged. The truth is, when someone argues for sameness in behavior, they're usually trying to justify imbalance in emotion. She's not mirroring men. She's mimicking detachment. And it's killing her ability to love deeply ever again. Phrase number 4. I just like my freedom. She says it lightly, almost playfully. Maybe after you ask, where is this going? She smiles, shrugs, and says, I just like my freedom. And right there, most men hear independence, but what you should hear is distance. Freedom isn't always a sign of strength. Sometimes it's a defense mechanism. A polished way of saying, I don't want to be chosen, because being chosen means being vulnerable. When she says she likes her freedom, what she's really expressing is fear. Not fear of you, fear of what commitment represents, accountability, consistency, emotional exposure. She's been in relationships before, some controlling, some disappointing. And she's learned that commitment often comes with pain. So now she rebrands her avoidance as empowerment. It's not rebellion, it's residue. The residue of every time she trusted and lost control. In modern dating, freedom has become a seductive lie. It gives the illusion of power. Endless options, no attachments, no expectations. But psychologically, too much freedom becomes isolation wearing lipstick. It keeps her in motion, chasing attention instead of connection. She doesn't want love. She wants leverage. The ability to leave before being left. Here's the truth. When someone values freedom over intimacy, they're not independent. They're untethered. And untethered people drift. You can't build with someone who's constantly half out the door, scanning for a better offer. That's not empowerment. That's self-preservation masquerading as choice. She doesn't want freedom. She wants flexibility. Flexibility to come and go. To take your consistency without offering certainty. To keep your heart warm while keeping her options open. So don't mistake her words for strength. Listen between the lines. When she says, "I like my freedom," what she really means is, "I've learned that connection comes with pain, and I'm not ready to risk it again." If you hear that, understand this. She's not inviting you closer. She's warning you to stay exactly where you are. Temporary. Phrase number 5. I don't regret anything. I learned from it sounds mature, grounded, wise. The kind of phrase people post under filtered selfies and captions about healing. But listen closely. That line often doesn't come from peace. It comes from damage that's been rebranded as wisdom. When she says, "I don't regret anything," what she's really doing is protecting her ego from collapse. Because regret forces accountability. Regret means admitting something could have been done differently. And that truth, that raw moment of self-awareness, threatens the self-image she's carefully built. So, she neutralizes it with a prettier word. Growth. But not all growth is real. In psychology, we call this cognitive reframing without behavioral change. It's when you rewrite your past in comforting language so you don't have to face the patterns you keep repeating. The phrase "I learned from it" becomes a shield. It sounds reflective, but it actually blocks reflection. Because if she truly learned, the behavior would have stopped. Real growth doesn't need to be announced. It's visible. It's quiet. It shows up in changed actions, not recycled affirmations. Yet she repeats this phrase because saying it gives her relief. It allows her to avoid guilt while keeping her old coping mechanisms alive. She's not lying to you. She's still lying to herself. Growth isn't repeating chaos and calling it wisdom. And every man should remember that line. Because the woman who constantly reminds you how much she's learned from her past often hasn't learned at all. She's just found better language to disguise the lessons she avoided. If you fall for it, you'll play the same role her last mistakes did. Validation disguised as a new start. So don't let poetic words blind you to behavioral truth. When someone says they don't regret anything, ask yourself, do their choices show evolution or repetition? Because regret isn't weakness. It's awareness. And the ones who deny it aren't enlightened. They're just afraid to admit the pain changed nothing. Phrase number 6. I was just having a phase. You'll usually hear it after the chaos has passed, when she talks about her party years, her wild decisions, or the people she no longer names. She smiles, waves it off, and says, that was just a phase. And just like that, everything heavy suddenly sounds harmless. But make no mistake, that line isn't self-awareness, it's self-eraser. In psychology, labeling something a phase is a defense mechanism. It lets the mind repackage shame as experience. By calling it temporary, she detaches herself from it emotionally, as if it happened to someone else entirely. But here's the catch. When you treat the past like a costume you wore, you never actually outgrow it. You just learn how to hide it better. She didn't outgrow the phase. She just outgrew the attention. That's the truth most won't say out loud. Because what she calls a phase often wasn't random. It was a pattern, a period of searching for validation, escape, or distraction from emptiness she didn't want to face. The lifestyle changed, but the hunger stayed. It just learned how to dress differently. When she tells you, it was just a phase, she's not lying. She's rationalizing. She wants you to believe that what she did doesn't define her anymore. And maybe on the surface, it doesn't. But the behaviors born in that phase, detachment, thrill-seeking, emotional avoidance, they don't disappear. They evolve. They show up later as flakiness, unpredictability, or the inability to stay grounded when things get too real. Don't judge her for having a past. Judge how she carries it. The difference between healing and hiding is ownership. A healed woman says, I made mistakes. A deflective one says, that wasn't me. That was a phase. One owns her evolution. The other edits her story. And if you can't tell which one you're dealing with, you'll find out the hard way. When history repeats itself, and she calls that too. Just another phase. These three phrases, freedom, growth, and phases, are the emotional smokescreens of modern detachment. Each one sounds empowered. Each one hides exhaustion. They're not confessions of strength. They're confessions of survival. Because when pain repeats long enough, people stop healing and start rebranding. They don't get better. They get better at explaining why they don't have to. And that's why understanding these patterns matters. You can't connect deeply with someone who's still busy defending their past instead of learning from it. You can't build trust with someone who's still editing their story. If you hear these phrases, don't try to debate them. Don't try to prove her wrong. Just recognize what they mean and decide if you're willing to play that role again. Because every time you ignore what's unsaid, you don't just lose clarity, you lose your emotional leverage. Phrase number 7. Sex doesn't mean anything to me. She says it with a straight face, maybe even with pride. Like she's graduated from the messy emotions that used to follow intimacy. To most men, that line sounds liberating. To psychologists, it's alarming. Because sex, biologically, neurologically, spiritually, always means something. Even when someone convinces themselves it doesn't. When a woman says, sex doesn't mean anything, she's not describing peace. She's describing disconnection. Somewhere along the line, sex stopped being about closeness and became about control. Every time she was betrayed, ghosted, or used, her nervous system adapted. Oxytocin, the bonding hormone, didn't stop releasing. She just learned how to suppress what it meant. So now, what used to create attachment now creates armor. She uses intimacy not to connect, but to stay unaffected. To prove to herself that she can be desired without being dependent, wanted without being weak. But there's a cost to that illusion, because the more she disconnects from what sex represents, the more numb she becomes to what love feels like. In psychology, this is called emotional numbing, a trauma response where the body participates, but the heart withdraws. She's not cold, she's conditioned. Conditioned to detach before she can be hurt. She'll tell you it's empowerment, that she's taking her power back. But real power isn't the absence of emotion. It's the ability to feel deeply and stay grounded in it. When someone says, sex doesn't mean anything to me, they're not free. They're defending themselves from meaning itself. Because meaning is vulnerability. Meaning is connection. Meaning is risk. And risk is where she once lost herself. So she builds walls, calls them boundaries, and tells herself she's healed. But healing without emotional safety isn't healing. It's emotional starvation dressed as control. She wants to be wanted but not seen, touched but not felt, chosen but never known. That's not liberation. That's protection with a pretty filter. And men fall for it every day, confusing her availability for intimacy, her openness for connection, her confidence for peace. But underneath it all, there's a heart that's exhausted from feeling too much, so now it feels nothing at all. The saddest part? That numbness doesn't stay confined to sex. It spills over into empathy, into attachment, into love itself. Because you can't selectively shut off emotion. You either feel fully or you stop feeling altogether. So when she says sex doesn't mean anything to me, what she's really saying is, I've given my body away so many times without safety that now I can't tell the difference between attention and affection. She's not the villain. She's the result. The result of a world that told her to be strong, but never safe. To be desirable, but never vulnerable. To be everything except human. Phrase number 8. I don't get attached easily. She says it softly, like she's proud of it. But that phrase, more than any other, is the final mask of emotional detachment. Because attachment is natural, human, biological. It's wired into us from birth. So when someone says they don't get attached easily, what they're really saying is, I've trained myself not to. It's not a personality trait. It's a response to pain. She once got attached too fast, too deep, to the wrong person. And when that connection broke, it shattered something inside her. Now, her nervous system equates closeness with danger, so she regulates it by keeping her emotions under strict control. You'll notice it in the small things. She doesn't text first, doesn't show excitement, doesn't say, "I miss you," even when she does. She's addicted to the illusion of detachment because it makes her feel powerful. It's her emotional insurance policy. If she never fully attaches, she never fully loses. But here's the irony. The people who say they don't get attached easily are often the ones who crave connection the most. They just crave it safely, on their terms, from their distance. They want the feeling without the falling, the closeness without the risk, the love without the surrender. But love doesn't work like that. You can't half open your heart and expect it to feel whole. This mindset creates what psychologists call avoidant attachment, a pattern where a person longs for intimacy but fears the vulnerability it requires. They crave closeness, but once it's offered, they withdraw. It's like touching fire. They want the warmth but fear the burn. So they keep relationships shallow. They flirt, they charm, they connect, but never attach. And when you get too close, they'll retreat behind a phrase that sounds calm but is loaded with trauma. "I just don't get attached easily." No, she does. She just doesn't let herself. Because getting attached once made her feel powerless. And she swore she'd never feel that small again. So now she protects herself with distance. She mistakes safety for strength, and emotional restraint for emotional maturity. But the truth, she's still attached, just secretly, silently, anxiously. She'll scroll through your messages at night but leave them unanswered. Think of you often but pretend she doesn't. Love you quietly but never let you see it. Because showing it means surrender, and surrender feels like danger. She doesn't want to lose you. She just wants to make sure you can't lose her. And that's the paradox of the modern detached woman. She's not heartless. She's heart-hurt. Her calm isn't peace. It's protection. The woman who says she doesn't get attached easily has simply learned to hide her attachment better than most. The hidden core. All 8 phrases, from "I'm fine" to "I don't get attached easily," are fragments of the same story. A story of women who once felt too deeply, too soon, too much, and decided feeling less was safer than hurting again. Emotional detachment isn't power. It's post-trauma discipline. It's the art of surviving connection without surrendering to it. But survival isn't the same as living, and what looks like emotional control is often quiet exhaustion. So if you meet her, the woman fluent in these phrases, understand this. She doesn't need saving. She needs safety. Safety to feel again. Safety to trust that connection won't cost her identity. Safety to realize that peace isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of security. Until she finds that, she'll keep speaking the language of detachment, and men will keep misreading it as strength. But now, you know better, because every phrase she says tells a story, not of who she is, but of what she's survived. And sometimes, decoding that story isn't about judgment, it's about understanding the wound beneath the confidence. That's how you stop being confused by her words and start hearing her truth.